Hi there, it's Sandra, and you are listening to the podcast A Duchess Like Us. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of A Duchess Like Us, a podcast that reports positively and fairly on Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Today, I am so excited to welcome my first guest on my first panel for this podcast. So, guests, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. I'm Gayle, and I'm known on social media as Breakthrough Diva, and a very ardent supporter of both the Duchess of Sussex and the Duke of Sussex as well.
I'm Nelly, and I'm your black girl north of the borders, and a massive fan of the Duchess of Sussex.
Excellent, and thank you, ladies, so much for coming on. So, let's start then. Well, last week was absolutely crazy. The royal reporters and the other Duke and Duchess absolutely outdid themselves with the nonsense they produced last week. So today, in this episode of the podcast, we're going to cover just 3 things that came up last week. The first thing is the Private Jet Saga / Fiasco. Hashtag, the plane was empty. Number 2, the new Nanny. And finally, SmartWorks. Now, I want to end with SmartWorks because I want to end the podcast on a really positive note. And I know that with numbers 1 and number 2, I think we're going to have quite a big discussion on it. So, let's carry on, shall we? Let's start with number 1, the Private Jet Saga Fiasco. So, I'm just going to give you a quick summary. So, basically, what happened was, it was claimed that the Sussexes took a private jet to go on a holiday to Ibiza and stay at a luxury resort at the beginning of August to celebrate Meghan's birthday. They stayed there approximately for a week and then flew back to the UK by private jet. Then a few days later, they were seen getting off another private jet in the south of France. It was later disclosed by Sir Elton John that he had let the Sussexes use his private home in Nice, and he had paid for the private jet for their return trip to France. He also made sure that the flight was carbon neutral by paying an appropriate amount into a carbon footprint fund. The other couple decided to show the world that they don't do private jets, so they decided to do a budget flight, a commercial flight, for the 5 of them from Norwich to Aberdeen. Now, on Friday night, and I'm laughing because it is funny, we found out that 2 empty jets flew 500 miles to show the world that the Cambridges did budget commercial flights. Now, ladies, what do we think of that?
Do you know what? It would be laughable, weren't actually true. It would be a very good comedy sketch. However, I have a couple of issues with this whole fiasco. The first one is the big issue that many people seem to have with this particular scenario is this accusation that Harry and Meghan have somehow been lying us, the general public, about how to travel, about climate change. So my comeback all week has been, please point me to the direction of the lecture, because there is no record that I can find publicly of the Duchess of Sussex having lectured anybody about how they should travel or about climate change even. There are comments on record that Harry has made, which quite frankly, if that's the lecture, then that's even more ludicrous, because what he has actually said, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that we should all do our bit. Every little bit helps. And he's absolutely right. And this whole private jet fiasco, I mean, let's be honest, the royals, regardless of who they are, have more of a necessity to travel by private jet than me or you. So if they're going to do that, then it's absolutely their responsibility to make sure that they offset the carbon emissions. I'm a driver, and because I drive, it's my responsibility to make that as green as possible. I do not yet have an electric car, but if I was in the market to buy a new car, I would most certainly explore the possibility of going electric, because that's my way of doing my bit. However, I recycle, and there are other things I do to make sure that I'm also doing my bit. I don't feel lectured by Harry or Meghan by them saying, or by Harry saying, we should all do our bit. So to me, this private jet fiasco has just been, it's not even a storm in a teacup. It's fools in a bag, quite frankly. That's what they all look like, fools in a bag.
I'm laughing because it is ridiculous. I have never seen so much nonsense written. And I want to go back to my first point, which said that Harry and Meghan had gone to Ibiza to celebrate her birthday. Well, there's no evidence to prove they've actually gone to Ibiza.
That's what they say, but where's the proof?
I don't know where they got this story from, but I don't know. But now that we've got evidence they went to Nice, all we're hearing they're talking about is carbon footprints and all that sort of nonsense, and it's just got ridiculous.
Chanel speaking here. Yes, if the Ibiza story felt like a fishing story, if you know what I mean. It's like it's a story that they put out the feelers for, hoping and to like sort of get people going, get the tin hats and all the anti Sussex, anti Meghan crew to be all mad. And then of course this Nice trip, which was the actual trip, of course, people were going to go ballistic because there's actual photographic proof of that, of them being in Nice, because you saw them leaving, getting off the plane, and then of course getting back on the plane to come back to the UK. I'm just not wholly convinced that the Ibiza story is true. I really don't. And the other thing that really gets my goat is that the media are reporting it that saying that it's 4 flights, 4 private jets that they have taken, like 4 different private jets, when that's not the case. We know that the Nice trip, it's Elton's, actual flipping private jet. So that's 1 plane. And yes, it did a return trip. Why are they counting it as 4? That just seems so dishonest to me.
I think they're trying to say that with the Ibiza trip, there's 2 return flights there, and then with the Nice trip, there are another two return flights. So that's 4 flights in total. But going back to my original point, I don't think there's any evidence that the Ibiza trip actually took place, and this whole reporting is not fair.
I mean, not only is there no evidence, but you have the reporter who is supposed to be a journalist, supposed to be a person of credibility and integrity, who has written this story for their readers to read and believe, but yet still he's asking those very same readers to provide him with evidence of the story he's just written about, i.e., do you know where they stayed? Can you confirm that they were there? I mean, that is a non-story, and anyone with even a modicum of common sense should be able to deduce that that is nothing more than a made-up grenade designed to set off, as Nelly so rightfully said, the tinfoil brigade. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. So my next question to you ladies is, why do you think that the UK press is portraying the Duke and Duchess so badly? What do you think they're getting out of this?
Sorry, who wants to go first?
No, you go ahead, Nelly.
Okay. Well, the first thing is that the reason why it's the whole spare narrative. I mean, they did the exact same thing to Andrew back in the day, portraying him as this, well, he is a loathsome character, but portrayed him and Fern as being these layabouts, as you know, they do, you know, Duke and Duck. What comes to mind is that headline, "The Duke and Duchess of Pork," because
Pork. That's yeah.
that comes to mind because they were mocking them for gaining weight. Well, mocking Fergie more than anyone. And I mean, there's a whole sexist thing going on there, which, you know, absolutely gross, in body shaming a woman. But it's the whole, you know, portraying the spare as, you know, a want sort of dilettante, as opposed to the heir who is hardworking and, you know, is you know, and is proper in every way possible, and that's how they're portraying William and Harry. As we all know, Charles is not popular. He's, you know, his son certainly more popular than he is, and despite the fact that he has, you know, he has worked incredibly hard, and, you know, he's worked incredibly hard to sort of gain a modicum of respect, despite being married to the woman who was, you know, obviously the mistress. He's gained some respect, certainly from me, in terms of, you know, working his ass off. There's nothing more you expect from him. You know, you can get from him. With William, on the other hand, he wants all of that. He wants the respect. He wants the adulation, but he ain't doing any of the flipping work. And Harry is doing a whole lot of work. He's talking sense about a lot of issues, and, you know, he's on the front foot. Yeah, he's very forward thinking with regards to, you know, how he sees, you know, the issues. And William is not. And then throw Meghan into the mix, who compliments Harry possible. They think they're on the same level in terms of their beliefs and how they carry out their and then what does that mean? It means leaving the Cambridges in the dust. So let's be honest, the only time people take notice is when Kate breeds. You know,
oh, true.
What? It's I know.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And, you know, I echo everything that Nelly has just said in terms of the heir and the spare, because let's be honest, William and Kate have had a long time before Meghan came on the scene to make them to have some kind of impact. And they're young, they're just on the cusp of that millennial type age group as well. So they do things in a very different way, perhaps, than my generation. I'm in my 50s, so it's slightly different. But they really had the opportunity there to do something and make some really great strides and inroads. And throughout Harry's upbringing, through his teenage years, yes, Harry's the rest of us. And that's why we love him, because we've all messed up in our teenage years. We've all done, and thankfully we didn't have social media cameras around every corner in our day, but Harry did. And so he made his mistakes publicly, but he's come through those and he's matured and he's found his purpose and his passions. And he found those long before Meghan came on the scene. Centauble was already running when he met Meghan. He was already, you know, becoming, as Meghan would say, that force for change before she came. And the two of them meeting together has just been exclusive in terms of impact, actually. And what that has done is highlighted in depending on your perspective, in both a good and a bad way, on what William and Kate have not or have done. And before, Harry was that threesome, so it looked like they were all doing great things together. Time was played out. We can see that really the one who was doing, the one who was creating, the one who was moving and shaking, if you like, was Harry. You know, and now that Meghan is on the scene, the two of them have just gone for it. And William and Kate don't know what's hit them. So what have they done? Especially William, he's done what he's always done. He's fallen back on that bratish behaviour that says, look at me, what about me? I'm the heir. This cannot happen. And the family, who are of this mindset, have said, hell no. I don't even know if we've got time to touch on the whole Prince Andrew thing, but you've only got to look at how that has played out. Nobody can touch Prince Andrew, really. So let's sacrifice Meghan. So you can imagine that when you magnify that for the air, what you're going to get. And that's what we're seeing. And coupled with the fact that Meghan's savvy, she didn't come royal family as a young, inexperienced girl.
Mm-hmm.
She was a fledged, successful woman on the world stage in whichever capacity, whether as an actress in her career or as a humanitarian. So she knows how, and she knows that her private life is her private life. So you then add that in the mix that, hold on, I'm going to give you everything publicly, but privately, that's for me and my husband, that's for me and my family. And the press don't like that.
Yeah, I do see where you're coming from. You see, I'm not an out-and-out royalist. I'm just not really into the royal family. But Meghan and Harry actually interest me because they are different and they do things differently. And I don't see what's wrong with them having a private life. As long as they do their royal duties and do the royal duties well, and they pursue their passions and their interests and do that properly, I'm actually quite happy for them to have a private life because it's really none of my business. So I don't understand why the press are doing this. But I really do, because that's how they make their money. They make their money off her.
Mm. And also, Sandra, you're in the minority, let's say, when it comes to the royal family, in terms of you totally understand that their private life is their private life, and many of us do. But historically, there has been a whole industry based around the royal family in terms of journalists and news and media. You've got people who make their money writing books. Andrew Morton, we wouldn't have even known who he was. He was a journalist on The Guardian or whatever.
No, Daily Star.
Sorry, Daily Star. Yeah, sorry, Daily Star. He was a journalist who, until he wrote that book about Diana, suddenly now, even to this day, he's still being called on, as a regular pundit for many things royal.
From what I understand, he didn't even write that book. She basically dictated it to him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he transcribed the book. That's what he did. He literally transcribed it.
Yeah. And let's also not forget, he wrote a book about Meghan. I would recommend read by the Fug Girls, who read the book and absolutely destroyed it in terms of its content and everything else in between. Just because he obviously spoke to people who had it in for Meghan. So he spoke to some of them and some other people within Hollywood, and what came out of that was just basically he looks down on Meghan being an actress. Basically he looks down on her.
But what's quite interesting is that the royal family and the royal commentators, especially the royal reporters, are behaving as if Meghan is the first actress stroke interloper to ever enter the family. Have they forgotten about Autumn? Peter Phillips' wife was a Canadian actress.
Was she an actress? I just know that she's Canadian.
Oh yeah, she was an actress. She was an actress. She was an actress, and exactly, they're behaving as if it's never happened before. But let's be honest. We have to look at this deeper and say, yes, this is racism. Let's call it what it is. It's racism. It's racism. Yes, there's misogyny in there, but there's also racism as well, because Meghan has not done or is not anything that has not gone before.
That is very true. But let's roll it back with Peter and Autumn. Peter is by all accounts a private citizen. He has no royal role, and by all accounts, him and his sister are mainly left alone, which is why you don't really hear anything about them. Really, they're Princess Anne's children. And like Princess Anne, shout out to her. She's a G. She's been the hardest working royal from from way back when. And you know, she's her ex-husband, my husband doesn't need a title, therefore my kids do not need titles. And I mean, they weren't entitled to anything because of the patriarchy surrounding monarchy, because Anne's a princess, her kids can't have titles automatically, unlike all of her, you know, her brothers, unlike her brothers. So
having said that, however, you know, yes, I totally understand and get that. And, you know, I was around at the time when all of that was kind of taking place when Zara and Peter were born. But having said that, Zara lives, you know, on her mother's estate on Gatton Park. Her and her husband and her kids, you know, they live in a taxpayer-funded accommodation. And it really gets my goat, the Daily Mail in particular, pushing this narrative, you know, of, you know, self-sufficient, independent Zara. Almost like, look, Meghan, this is how it should be if you really want to be private, renounce. However, Zara is a brand ambassador. She is leveraging her royal connections. Trust me, right? She's a brand ambassador. She receives payment for equestrian consultancy. Lives in a taxpayer-funded property. Her children still have security. So, you know.
Yeah. Oh, and my other favorite person that lives technically no longer a member of the royal family, but lives with her ex-husband in tax. Good old Fergie.
Our favourite hustler, Fergie.
She's a hustler, isn't she?
She's a hustler, let me tell you. Fergie knows how to hustle. They want to call Meghan grifter. Look at that the Duke of York's palace. There's your grifter.
Yeah.
Glad you said that.
But no, I mean, at the end of the day, it's, you know, it is gross how, you know, they are trying to portray Meghan as this person who has, you know, who has like faked her way into the royal family. And I'm like, could you? And I'm like, these guys have amnesia, because they accused the Middletons of doing the exact same thing.
Do you remember?
They did the exact same thing. You know, you know, they are, you know, nouveau riche, you know, self-made millionaires, and then they gave us these 3 dilettante children. Because what the hell do those kids do? No one can't flip and tell me. You know,
they don't do anything.
They don't do anything. The son, what does he do?
He's got a failed party company, which is a
marshmallow company.
Yeah, Pippa, who writes a book for Waitrose that fails? I mean, even that is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ladies, can I just take you back to a point just made by Nelly, where she was talking about the portrayal of Meghan? Do you think that the UK press and society in general, that they see Black Brits in the same way that they see Meghan?
I think, if I'm being honest, I think they do. I mean, most certainly, sections of certain demographics, most definitely. You know, they see her as a face that doesn't quite fit. You know, to quote. That's not me. I'm quoting from someone who had written an article recently defending her. A quote unquote face does not fit. And yes, it is down to racism. And because Britain on a whole has an issue, or, you know, has not even an issue, Britons have a problem talking about race. They are scared shitless. I mean, calling a white person racist, that's to them that's like calling a black person the N-word. That's how bad it is calling them racist. That you know, I mean, but Britain has an issue talking about racism because it hasn't addressed its colonial past. It and you can see that in its education, and also just and they find, and just very lazy ways of talking about racism. You cannot have an intellectual conversation with people about race in this country, you know.
I agree with you.
I personally think that they are uncomfortable talking about it. I think that they know the damage that racism has caused, and they refuse to acknowledge it.
Yeah. See, I agree with you both to a degree. And I also think that there is a real lack of understanding as to exactly what racism is in the UK.
Yes.
You know, it's people think racism is calling each other abusive words.
Mm-hmm.
They think it is as overt as that. You know, they hark back to, I can't be a racist because I'm not like the guy in the 70s sitcom Love Thy Neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not like George, who was in George and Mildred. I'm not like Jim Davidson because I don't call people chalky. You know, they think that is racism, that it is as overt as that. But racism, as we know, is very, very, very subtle, especially when you mix that with a British culture that doesn't like conflict anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a real lack of understanding. And however, Sandra, you mentioned something regarding the whole thing around the Black Brits in the press. I think I agree with what you say, that they do try to other Meghan because she doesn't fit, her face doesn't fit, but her face also doesn't fit, and this is a bigger issue. Her face also doesn't fit with the perception that they have of Black British here in the media, because, you know, we're portrayed, and this is why recently, I don't know if any of you saw the recent series of Love Island with Ovi. This is why Ovi was such a big hit, but he was a surprise. Why was he a surprising hit? Because that's not their expectation of how a Black man behaves.
Yeah.
You know, because
you know, big, strong,
he's a young
guy, and young. But he was a goofball.
He was an absolute
goofball.
But he was an absolute gentleman. And when I look around my family, I see a family of Ovies. When I look around my friendship groups, I see a friendship of Ovies. They're the people that I don't understand why the British media have this, you know, they think that we're all gangs, knife wielding, drug taking, you know,
and that all of you live in London. That's the other thing,
right? And exactly, and that there are no black people outside. Yeah, we all live in Brixton in London. Do you know? It's just ridiculous.
Gentrified Brixton.
Yeah, you know, and it's just ridiculous because, you know, that's not. And that's also the picture that the world has of us. When you go outside of the UK, you know, and they think we're American. Oh, you've got black people in Britain, in England, yeah. And now with the whole Meghan explosion, not only are they realizing that there are black people in the UK, they're now seeing that, oh my gosh, there's racism in the UK.
Yeah,
you know? But where are the Black Brits speaking up about it? You know, well, the three of us are talking about it now, but as a collective, a lot of my friends and family think I'm crazy to mention Meghan. You're going to start her off again, you know, because to them it's like, oh, so what? She married into them, so what?
Yeah.
And so where do we go as a Black British with, you know, seeing a biracial woman like being attacked in the media daily? And it's all, you know, yesterday Kate went to church. Queen, what was the headline in the papers? Oh, Kate wears £5,000 earrings to church with the Queen, but where's Meghan? You know, Meghan wasn't there, so why are you mentioning Meghan in the headline? It's about Kate and the Queen.
Yeah.
And if they're going to victimise Meghan like that, there's no reason why they wouldn't victimise.
I agree with you.
Well, I mean, this is something that's been going on for as long as I can remember. But I think the first time I've seen it so nakedly done has been towards black footballers.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, of course, the whole Raheem Sterling has been, well, it's not the first. I mean, Raheem Sterling, in terms of, he's, what the Daily Mail were having like tons of and the Sun and all of those, but having front pages of him buying a house for his mum. Of course he's going to buy a house for his mum. He's a man earning stupid money, and of course you're going to want to give your mum a house for I'd do that if I was any good at football. But no, it's almost, and it's also very similar to the Obamas. Till this very day, we're hearing American media bitching about how much money the Obamas are making. They've just recently bought a £50 million house, and they're making a heap of noise about that. They're forgetting that these are two very accomplished people who Obama had 2 books. Of course, he could. Of course, a lot of the money that he made from those books, he could probably pay for that house. He didn't enrich himself while he was president, unlike the current fool in the White House. But it's this whole notion that Black people are not allowed to have nice things.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter how you are. I mean, look at Meghan. She's a biracial woman, but she's very white presenting. How many people were shocked to find out that she had a Black mum? A lot of people.
To be fair, I've always known Meghan from she was on Suits. I love Suits. I like
same here.
So I used to watch Suits, and when I realised that Meghan, the actress, was biracial, was when her father, Wendell Pierce, appeared on Suits. Her character's father, and I thought, oh, Rachel's mixed race. Right?
Yeah.
So then I thought, oh well, Meghan Markle must be mixed race then, because she is very white presenting,
and in the past she has of course spoken about she has spoken explicitly about race and about colorism, and the colorism that she's faced, because of course she's white she's mixed race, but she's a white presenting. She has straightened hair, she's got freckles, so people were not sure how to cast her. Like, do we cast her as a Latina? Do we cast her as a Black girl? Do we cast her as a white girl? I've seen a couple of films in which, and they're these terrible, bless her, they're these terrible romantic comedy films made for TV films that she's starred in, and she's had parents who were both white, for example.
Yes.
So unless and look, she didn't look out of place or anything like that, so it was a bit of a shock for me that she was no, I wouldn't say a shock, but it was a bit of a okay, fair enough, but you do all these roles, but hey, you gotta work, go where go where the work is. But she has spoken that, but at the end of the day, she's a biracial woman with a Black mother, and look, the way how we look at it is that her mother, who is the only parental, the only family at this moment she's got, is a Black woman, and that bothers people.
Yeah,
it bothers people. That her Black mother is the constant in her life. The reason, there was when Markle Senior was going on with his foolishness, being interviewed by who on Good Morning Britain. And all of these royal commentators basically saying, "Oh, make up with your father. He just made a little mistake.
Oh, please.
What? Get out of here.
If that was if her father was Black, I'm telling you now, that's not.
They would have told him to kick rocks. They would have told him to get, yeah. I mean, and that's the other. I've always said that. I'm like, if her father acted the way, if her father was a black man and acted like the way that senior has, they would have said, "Now she's best get rid of him."
Exactly.
But no, well, every one of them were like, "Oh, she should make up with her father." I'm like, no, she shouldn't. He's clearly a piece of work. He's always been a piece of work long before, this whole thing with Harry has. And, if you read all of his interviews and things, this is a man that doesn't see Meghan as his daughter. He sees her as a cash cow and relinquishing his most prized, sort of possession. That's what she was,
Okay. Even though that was a really good conversation about the topic, I think we should wrap that up and move on to our next topic. So the next topic is, or what I want to talk about, is the new nanny. So the press is saying that this lady is the new nanny. Now, this is my thing. So we see a picture of a woman at the airport and we don't know who she is. She could be a Royal Protection Officer. She could be their new PR person. She could be somebody who just simply works at the airport. She could actually even be the pilot of the plane. We don't know.
She could be Meghan's auntie, because Doria's got has an older sister who wasn't at the wedding.
Yeah.
But oh well, yeah. Since we're working out conspiracies here.
She could be anybody. But what I found was particularly interesting was that why does the UK press assume that she's the nanny? Are they trying to say that the only thing that black people can do is be a nanny? Is that what they're trying to say?
That's what, and that is what I got when I saw that. That's exactly what I got. I thought, well, hold on, who said she's the nanny? Just because she's a black woman walking down the steps, that doesn't mean she's the nanny. As you said, she could be anybody. But again, there's this thing of reporting without any substance. Because what was the request at the end of the article? Does anybody know who this woman is? Where is she? What is she about?
Who is she?
Again, who is she? Public to provide, to invade this woman's privacy and basically provide them with details. Now, if Meghan or even the woman herself wanted us to know who she was, we'd know who she is. Right? It's as simple as that. And this is how they destroy people's lives. Who care? I don't care whether she's the nanny or not, quite frankly. I know and I trust and I believe that Meghan and Harry are looking after their baby, whether they choose to do it with or without a nanny. I don't care. It's not my concern.
Yeah.
But this woman who, for whatever reason, has now been associated with them, her life is being turned upside down. And then they wonder why the godparents wanted to remain private. Who wants to subject themselves to that?
You can't deny that, can you? I mean, what else can I say? And it also sums up a few things for me. Number one, the UK press, not everyone, but the UK press only sees a black person as some sort of domestic. Number two, the press, feel they have the right to put out a request to the public asking for the identity of this person. That's outrageous. If you don't know who the person is, then ask Meghan or Harry. And number three, if they did ask Meghan or Harry who this person was, they'd say no. I'm not going to tell you who this person is because this person has the right to privacy. How dare they do that? It's outrageous. But it comes back to my original point of how does the UK press see a black person or black people? And from what I can see about this particular topic, they only see black people as domestics. That's all we're good for.
Less than. They see us as being less than. Yeah, they see us as being less than, and therefore, and again, it goes back to Nelly's point earlier on. But they do not see that black people can have nice things, because one person be on this private jet with Meghan and Harry unless she is the domestic. They cannot conceive that there could be other reasons for her to be there because we are less than. And to be honest, I don't even think it goes any much. That's their perception. Again, it goes back to the whole thing of race. They don't even understand racism. To them, that's not right. The fact that they've assumed that the woman is the nanny, that's not racist. They'd be like, well, why is that racist? Well, huh? You know, it is.
You know, the other thing is, okay, since we're on, okay, let's say if she is the nanny, okay, let's say she is the nanny, okay, so she is the nanny. They're going to compare her to the Cambridge's nanny.
Oh, which one? The Cambridges have more than one nanny.
Okay, well, the original OG,
Yeah.
the original OG,
Yeah.
Maria.
Yeah.
You know, she's she's the only one I know. I don't know the other ones. You know, I'm not even. I mean, I'm not even sure if they've got. I can only think of Maria. I've not seen the other nannies. I know that like when George was born, one of Harry's they bought one of William's old nannies to help out for a bit, and then they eventually got Maria. But I don't know if Louis and Charlotte have their own personal nannies. But we definitely know that Maria is the one in terms of one that looks after the Cambridge children. So, but going back to my point, they will start the press would, you know, or you know, obviously the right wing tabloids will start a flippant. They will have a page in which they will dedicate a whole column to what's so good about Maria and the experience, you know, comparing experiences and where they were, you know, how long they've been nannies and all of that. You know, such trivial shit, which by all accounts are non-stories and, you know, should not be of any interest to us. I don't care who raises the royal children. I really, you know, it shouldn't matter to anyone. And you know, I don't care, you know, just so long as obviously the you know, the parents do have a firm hand in, you know, raising their, not just leave it to, you know, like how the Queen was raised, father and all, you know. So yeah, that's where I am with Nanny Gate.
You know what? I really can't see Meghan and Harry handing that child over to a nanny and saying, "Oh, go and bring that child up in the nursery." They will definitely be hands-on parents. You can see with the interactions they have with children when they do their walkabouts for their royal duties. I mean, they appear to me to be very genuine, and they interact very well with young people.
They interact really well with babies, you know, especially Harry.
Yeah. Oh, Harry is just a natural.
Yeah. Well, look, I have my ovaries burst seeing men interact.
Let me tell you. And Harry especially, I'll tell you. Oh, bless.
I think they're going to be good parents. I think that this nannygate nonsense is just ridiculous. I mean, I don't care if she is the nanny or not. I was just a bit annoyed that the press assumed that she was. If she is the nanny, good luck to her, because I think that she'll have a great time working with them and the family. And it's a wonderful place to be, I suppose, Frogmore. If she isn't the nanny, good luck to her, because she can be whoever she wants to be. So, is there anything else that anyone else to add, or should we move on to our final topic, because this has been the one I've been really looking forward to talking about?
Just one thing about the nanny. I'm glad that it's a black woman, because personally I'm happy that it's a black woman, because in a way, you know, sort of Meghan can, you know, Meghan has a, you know, a person that looks like Archie's grandmother, maternal grandmother. You know, and therefore could, you know, relate a little bit, and you know, and because I don't think I've seen. I mean, most nannies that we know tend to be English and, you know, and white. Well, especially in the royal family, they tend to be white. So to have like a black nanny, not, you know, fine, whatever. But I think it's quite cool for Archie to have a lady that's looking after him that looks like his grandma.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Okay, with that, let's move on to my favourite bit, which is SmartWorks. So last week, I can't remember what day it was, Wednesday or Thursday, Sussex Royal dropped a behind the scenes video footage of the SmartWorks Capitals Collection photo shoot. And I absolutely lost my mind. I was so excited. I adore this charity, and to see the capsule collection coming together and coming to fruition, it's amazing. Watching the ladies being models for the day and Meghan greeting them as they arrived, it was amazing. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about it and let you guys talk about it. So, Gayle, do you want to go first? Because I know that you love the idea too.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I mean, I don't know if either of you have seen my Twitter thread that was inspired by it a few days ago as well, because SmartWorks has always been a charity that I've felt quite close to for a number of reasons. I know what it's like to be a woman that's down on your luck and need to get back into the workplace. I know what it's like to both be one of those women and also to provide support to those women. So I've always had a bit of an affiliation with any organisation like SmartWorks. And I was overjoyed in January when I heard that Meghan was going to be their new patron. SmartWorks is not actually based that far away from where I live in West London. And it's a charity that I've always wanted to do some volunteer work with, and I'm pleased to say that's now in the pipeline. So there's anyway, but also just from a commercial perspective, as a strategist, as a branding and marketing strategist, I see it fail a lot. You know, that's just part of what I do. Businesses also succeed, and some of them become, they become revived. And Marks and Spencer's was one of those businesses that was always dead, and Marks and Spencer's is a store of the British High Street. So to see someone like Meghan come in and have this idea that says, right, I'm going to leverage one of my charities to also help the high street. I'm going to leverage the high street to help one of my charities. Real hand in glove strategy there with Jigsaw and M&S and John Lewis, designer friendly Shaluna. That's real growth. That's not fluff. That's not pomp and ceremony. That's not just turning up, smiling in hand. That's proper impact and influence. And see that in action from a member of the royal family, regardless of their colour, right? To see that from a member of the royal family genuinely making an impact on the British economy and on people's all for it all day, every day.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said there. With her, linking up with the likes of M&S and John Lewis, two very British institutions, department stores, is absolutely amazing. Yeah, I can't wait for the actual to see the piece myself.
And me too. And I'll be buying. I will be buying a piece or two. I just know I will. And it's funny because me and my partner often go into Marks and Spencer. Quite frankly, I'll be very honest in the spirit of transparency, to laugh at the collections, because their clothes are so dire and have been for such a while now that we go in there to look at the fabrics and to look at the prints and be like, who on earth wears this stuff? Yeah. So now that I love their lingerie. I do buy M&S lingerie because I love their hosiery. But their clothing has been dire for years. So now to see that they've got an injection that's now already reflected on their bottom line, their share price has already increased. Clothes aren't even in the store yet. So I'm really pleased. I'm so excited, and I'm excited for her.
So I think the launch of the collection is on the 19th of September. And I think it's going to be at SmartWorks in Leeds, but I need to check that out. And then they say that the capsule will be in stores fairly soon afterwards. So anyway, that's my take on SmartWorks. And my question to you ladies is, do you think the press are more upset that Meghan has actually used her contacts and know-how to put off this project or put it together? And do you think that's what's killing them, the fact that she could actually do this?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not only they're pissed at the fact that, for one, that they had no clue that this was happening.
Exactly.
Because usually with how these things work, if a royal is working on a big project, then they would, not necessarily details, but it'll be put out there in the, by the press secretary to the royal reporters, oh, they are working on this, and then there'll be, and there will be communicated like all the little steps. So they're mad because they do not have any. They're mad that they do not get the access for this. But I think one of the ways that the Sussex work is that they want to ensure that everything is put together before launch. That if there was any problems or anything that would be foreseen as some kind of hindrance, that it not be put out there and therefore hijack or just mess up the whole project. So I mean, that's the reason why the Together Cooks such a phenomenal success. Did any of you buy that book?
I'm looking at it. I've got it's right here next to my Forces for Change. My two Vogue magazines actually. So yes.
I just wanted to say, isn't that how you're supposed to run a business? You need to make sure that the project that you are bringing to market is complete. You want to make sure that this project is going to be successful. Isn't that how you run a business? So why would the UK press expect it to be different for Meghan?
Because they've never run a business. They've never looked at it or even seen it as a business. To them, it was royal privilege that just meant that they had to go and put their name to something, sign the odd thing, shake hands, accept flowers from the kids, and then they go back home. Right, Meghan has shown them, hold on a second, if you're going to have impact here, then you've got to. It's a classic example of giving someone a fish or teaching them to fish. The royal family have spent years and years handing out fish. Meghan's come along and she's teaching how to fish. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Anyway, I'm proud of our Duchess. This is the second major project that she's pulled off, and the UK press had no idea it was coming. I'm glad she's done it because she is portraying black people in a positive light. Yes, we can run businesses, we can be successful. And we can be successful not just in sport, but in everyday life. And that is my take on this whole situation. Ladies, what's your take on this situation?
What I would like to see, I think Meghan has been the catalyst for some really interesting debate amongst a lot of people. And I would like to see more debate amongst us Black British as well, about not just how we can support Meghan, but how we can support each other. What are we learning from this? How are we now going to control our own narrative about how we're portrayed? Exactly. What are we teaching our children? What can our children contribute even to this debate? There's a lot there for us to unpack and explore.
Absolutely. And I hope that this podcast can be the start so that we can start talking about things that concern us. Because I don't think there is much out there for Black Brits in the UK. And what can we do to make our lives better? Because I don't believe there are many platforms out there for us so that we can get the correct narrative out about us, not just Meghan, but Black Brits in general. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to my wonderful guests for actually coming on and making this episode so good. Don't forget to send in your questions or topics if you'd like to have anything discussed in future episodes. if you'd like to be a guest panelist on the podcast, you can reach out to me on email at hello@aduchesslikeus.com, or you can DM me on Twitter at DuchessUs. If you haven't subscribed, then please hit that subscribe button, and please share this podcast with anybody else who you think might be interested in it. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and that you'll come back for more soon. So I'll see you next time. Bye.